Police thought they were handcuffing just another confused old man. They couldn't have been more wrong. When FBI agents stormed into the station 30 minutes later, everyone realized this wasn't a routine arrest. This is the story of James Parker, 85-year-old war hero, and the secret he protected for over half a century. Before you watch the complete story, please comment down from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in Millfield. The kind where nothing happens and everyone likes it that way. The police station hummed with the boring routine of small-town law enforcement officers filling paperwork, dispatch taking occasional calls about barking dogs or teenagers making noise at the park. Officer Ryan Miller was just 3 hours into his shift when the call came in. A disturbance at Parkview Senior Living. Some old man acting strange, refusing to let staff into his room. Probably nothing serious, but they had to check it out. "Miller, take Jenkins with you," Sergeant Brooks said without looking up from his computer. "Probably just a confused resident." Miller nodded, grabbing his keys. Rookie Officer Jenkins followed him out to the patrol car, eager for any break from the monotony. Parkview Senior Living sat on the edge of town, a sprawling one-story building with well-kept gardens. The manager met them at the entrance, a middle-aged woman with worry lines etched deep into her forehead. "It's Mr. Parker in 112, she explained, leading them down a corridor that smelled of disinfectant and cafeteria food. "He's been here 4 years, never caused any trouble. But today he's barricaded himself in his room. Won't let anyone in, not even for medications. And he's got something in there he won't let anyone see." "What kind of something?" Jenkins asked. "Don't know. Large metal case. Never seen it before. He keeps saying they're coming for it, and that it has to stay sealed." Miller and Jenkins exchanged glances. Probably dementia. Sad but routine. Room 112 had a small American flag sticker on the door alongside a faded Marine Corps emblem. Miller knocked firmly. "Mr. Parker?" "Police officers." "Can we talk to you, sir?" Silence. Then shuffling footsteps. "Who sent you?" The voice was old but clear, sharp with suspicion. "Nobody sent us, sir. The staff are concerned about you." "Badge numbers." "Say them loud." Miller recited his badge number, followed by Jenkins. There was a long pause. "Not them," the old voice finally said. "Not who I'm waiting for. Sir, we need you to open the door." "Can't do that. Not until the right people come." Miller sighed. "Mr. Parker, if you don't open this door, we'll have to come in. You don't understand what's at stake, son." Miller nodded to Jenkins, who produced the master key the manager had given them. The lock clicked open. Inside they found a neatly kept room. Military photos on the walls. Medals in a glass case. And standing beside the bed, an elderly man in pressed khakis and a button-up shirt. His back was straight despite his age, his white hair neatly combed. Beside him on the bed sat a large metal case, secured with multiple locks. "Mr. Parker," Miller said gently. "I'm Officer Miller. This is Officer Jenkins. The staff are worried about you." James Parker looked at them with clear blue eyes. No confusion. No fear. Just determination. "You boys need to leave," he said calmly. "This isn't your concern." "What's in the case, sir?" Jenkins asked. "Something that needs to go to the right people. Not you." "Are these right people coming to get you, Mr. Parker?" Miller asked. "They will. Once they know I have it." "Have what, sir?" Parker shook his head. "I've said too much already." Miller stepped closer. "Sir, we can help you. Whatever you're worried about." "Stay back from the case," Parker warned, his voice suddenly sharp. Jenkins moved toward the case. Parker stepped between him and it with surprising agility for an 85-year-old. "Don't touch it. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Miller placed a hand on his holster, not drawing his weapon, just an instinctive reaction. "Sir, step away from the case." "I can't do that, son." "Mr. Parker, we don't want to handcuff an elderly man, but if you don't cooperate." "You'll do what you have to do," Parker said. "So will I." 10 minutes later, James Parker sat handcuffed in the back of the police cruiser, his face a mask of calm resignation. The metal case was locked in the trunk. He hadn't resisted the cuffs, just asked repeatedly that the case remain sealed until the proper authorities arrived. At the station, Parker was photographed, fingerprinted, and placed in an interview room, his hands still cuffed. The metal case was logged into evidence. Officer Jenkins had joked that it probably contained the old man's war medals and love letters. Everyone had laughed. No one was laughing now. At precisely 8:47 p.m., exactly 30 minutes after Parker's fingerprints hit the system, The front doors of Millfield Police Station swung open. 6 men and women in dark suits entered with the synchronized efficiency of people who had done this many times before. The lead agent, a stern-faced woman in her 40s, approached the front desk. "Special Agent Diana Hayes, FBI," she said, flashing credentials. "You have someone in custody. James Parker, 85 years old, brought in within the last hour." The desk sergeant blinked in surprise. Yes ma'am. How did you?" "And a metal case that was in his possession. We need to see both immediately." The sergeant picked up his phone. 2 minutes later, Sergeant Brooks appeared, confusion etched on his face. "I'm Sergeant Brooks. What's this about?" Agent Hayes lowered her voice. "You've brought in someone of significant interest to national security. We need to speak with him immediately, and we need to secure the item in his possession." The other agents had spread throughout the station, their expressions unreadable. One stood by the evidence room door. Another near the hallway leading to the interview rooms. "National security?" Brooks repeated. "Ma'am, we're talking about an 85-year-old man who was causing a disturbance at a retirement home." Hayes fixed him with a look that stopped further questions. "Sergeant, I'm not at liberty to explain further at this time. Please take me to him. Now." The interview room door opened. Parker looked up, his cuffed hands resting on the metal table. When he saw Agent Hayes, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Took you long enough," he said. Hayes nodded to the 2 officers. "Remove those cuffs. Then leave us." "Ma'am, I can't just," Brooks began. "You can and you will, Sergeant. This is now a matter of national security." Reluctantly, Brooks nodded to Miller, who unlocked the handcuffs. Parker rubbed his wrists, his eyes never leaving Agent Hayes. "The case?" he asked. "Secure," she replied. "Is it what we think it is?" Parker nodded once. "Same as it was in '73. Never opened it. Kept my promise." Hayes turned to the officers. "We need a private room. Now." 10 minutes later, Parker sat in the police chief's office with Hayes and 2 other agents. The metal case was on the desk between them. Through the glass walls, officers tried not to stare as the FBI agents examined it with reverence. Brooks, Miller, and Jenkins waited outside, exchanging confused glances. "What the hell is going on?" Jenkins whispered. "No idea," Brooks replied. "But this isn't normal protocol even for the FBI." Inside the office, Hayes was speaking into a secure phone. "Yes, sir. Confirmation positive. The Guardian is in our custody along with the package. Awaiting extraction." She listened for a moment. "Understood. We'll prepare him and the local team for briefing." She ended the call and turned to Parker. "Colonel Parker, on behalf of the director, I want to thank you for your continued service." Parker nodded, his posture military straight despite his age. "The contents are undisturbed?" "We'll verify, but the seals appear intact. 52 years in your protection and you never faltered. I made a promise to Adams before he died. Said I'd make sure it reached the right people when the time came." Hayes nodded. "The time has come, sir." She turned to the door and gestured for the officers to enter. Brooks, Miller, and Jenkins filed in, their confusion evident. "Gentlemen," Hayes began, "what I'm about to tell you is classified. You will be required to sign non-disclosure agreements before we leave." She gestured to Parker. "This man is not just James Parker, resident of Parkview Senior Living. He is Colonel James Parker, United States Marine Corps, retired. One of the last surviving members of Operation Silent Sentinel, a Cold War program so classified that most of the Pentagon doesn't know it existed." The officers stared at Parker with new eyes. The old man they had handcuffed and treated like a confused senior was something else entirely. In 1973, Colonel Parker's unit intercepted critical intelligence that, had it fallen into the wrong hands, could have altered the course of the Cold War. When the operation went sideways and his team was compromised, Parker was entrusted with securing this evidence until it could be safely delivered to the proper authorities. "For 52 years, Parker said quietly, I've kept it safe. Moved 17 times. Changed my name twice. Watched for signs I'd been discovered. But why now?" Miller asked. "After all this time?" Hayes and Parker exchanged glances. "The last surviving member of the hostile operation died last week," Hayes explained. "The colonel's final orders were to wait until all threats were neutralized before delivering the package. With that confirmation, he activated the protocol that would alert us to his location." "By getting arrested," Jenkins said with sudden understanding. Parker nodded. "My fingerprints in the system would trigger the alert. Fastest way to make contact without exposing myself." Brooks shook his head in amazement. You allowed yourself to be handcuffed and brought in, as a signal? Wasn't my first choice, Parker said with a small smile. But at my age, options are limited. Agent Hayes opened the metal case carefully. The officers couldn't see inside from where they stood, but they noticed how the agents handled the contents with extreme care. One of them used a special device to scan whatever was inside. Confirmed, ma'am, the agent said. Seals intact. Authentication codes match. Hayes nodded and closed the case again, securing it with her own electronic lock. What is it? Jenkins asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Hayes looked at Parker, who gave a slight nod. In 1973, Hayes said, Colonel Parker's team discovered evidence of a mole at the highest levels of government. Someone was feeding information to the Soviets, information that got American agents killed and nearly exposed our most sensitive operations. We tracked it to a senior official, Parker continued. But he had powerful friends. The investigation was buried. My team was disbanded. 2 of my men died in accidents, within a year. Ace tapped the case. This contains the evidence that would have exposed him. Names, dates, recordings, documents that prove treason at the highest level. But that was 50 years ago, Brooks said. Why does it matter now? Because the people involved may be gone, but the networks they built aren't, Hayes explained. And some of their children and protégés are in positions of power today. This evidence doesn't just expose what happened then, it connects to operations still active now. Parker's voice was quiet but firm. The man responsible died thinking he got away with it. His secrets died with him. But the truth was waiting here all this time. Miller looked at the old man with new respect. You've been protecting this for 50 years? Alone. Had help at first. My team. One by one they died off. Natural causes, mostly. I was the last one left. The last guardian, Hayes said. The weight of those words settled on everyone in the room. 50 years of secrecy. 50 years of vigilance. All leading to this moment in a small-town police station. Hayes turned to the officers. Gentlemen, you've unwittingly played a role in one of the longest-running intelligence operations in American history. What happened tonight will never appear in any report. The official record will show a confused elderly man was returned to his care facility after a misunderstanding. She paused, looking at each of them. But unofficially, you helped bring home one of America's most valuable intelligence assets and a true hero. Parker dismissed this with a wave of his hand. Did my duty. Same as you boys do every day. Miller stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, I want to apologize for the handcuffs. If we had known. Nothing to apologize for, son, Parker interrupted. You did your job. Did it well. Outside, the sound of vehicles pulling up caught everyone's attention. Through the window they could see 3 black SUVs with government plates. Our extraction team, Hayes explained. We need to move the package and Colonel Parker to a secure location immediately. Parker stood slowly, his joints stiff but his posture still military straight. Been waiting for this day since Nixon was president, he said with a slight smile. Never thought I'd live to see it. As the agents prepared to leave, Parker asked for a moment. Hayes nodded and stepped away, giving him space with the officers. Son, Parker said to Miller, when I joined the Marines in '58, my drill instructor told us something I never forgot. He said, most people never face a moment of real consequence in their lives. But you will. And when that moment comes, the only question is whether you'll recognize it and have the courage to do what's necessary. He looked at each officer in turn. Tonight wasn't just about an old case. It's about showing that the truth always finds a way. That some things are worth protecting no matter how long it takes. Jenkins, the young rookie who had helped handcuff Parker hours earlier, looked troubled. Sir, I don't understand why you didn't just tell us who you were. Parker smiled patiently. Son, I've spent 50 years not telling people who I am. Old habits die hard. Besides, would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was just another old man with delusions? Jenkins had no answer for that. The official story, Parker continued, is that I got confused. Happens to old folks like me. You boys brought me in, realized your mistake, and sent me back to Parkview. That's all that happened here tonight as far as anyone knows. But we'll know different, Miller said quietly. Yes, Parker agreed. You will. And maybe someday when all this is declassified the world will know too. But not today. Today it remains our secret. Agent Hayes approached again. It's time, Colonel. Parker nodded and straightened his shirt. Been ready for 52 years, Agent Hayes. As he turned to leave, Parker stopped one last time and looked back at the officers. Remember, boys. Every day, ordinary people are faced with extraordinary moments. The trick is recognizing them when they come. The FBI agents formed a protective circle around Parker and the case as they moved through the station. Officers watched in silence as the 85-year-old man they had handcuffed just hours before was now treated with the respect reserved for visiting dignitaries. Outside, Parker paused at the top of the station steps, looking up at the night sky. For a moment he seemed to be saying goodbye to something, or someone. "Adams?" he whispered, too quiet for anyone but Hayes to hear. "Mission complete, old friend." Hayes placed a respectful hand on his shoulder. "They'd be proud, sir. All of them." Parker nodded once, then continued down the steps to the waiting vehicles. Back inside, the officers watched through the windows as the convoy pulled away, taking with it a hero none of them had recognized and a secret none of them fully understood. "Did that really just happen?" Jenkins asked, still processing. Brooks nodded slowly. "It happened. And tomorrow we go back to noise complaints and traffic stops like nothing ever happened." Miller touched his shoulder where Parker's hand had rested. "But it did happen. And we'll remember." 3 days later, a package arrived at the station addressed to Officers Miller and Jenkins. Inside was a vintage challenge coin from an unidentified military unit. The note accompanying it read simply, "Sometimes ordinary men find themselves in extraordinary moments. Thank you for recognizing the moment. JP." That same day, the local newspaper ran a small story about an elderly man with dementia who had been briefly detained by police after a misunderstanding at Parkview Senior Living. The story mentioned nothing about the FBI, nothing about classified documents, nothing about a 50-year mission finally completed. But in a small police station in Millfield, 3 officers now looked at the world differently. They understood that behind ordinary facades, extraordinary stories sometimes hide. That the quiet old man at the coffee shop might once have been a hero. That history sometimes unfolds in unlikely places. Miller keeps that challenge coin in his pocket every day. A reminder that in a small town where nothing ever happens, something remarkable once did. And for 30 minutes, an 85-year-old hero sat handcuffed in their interview room, waiting patiently for the mission he started half a century ago to finally end. 1 week later, Agent Hayes returned to Millfield alone. She found Miller at the end of his shift, climbing into his patrol car. "Officer Miller," she called. "A moment, please." Miller nodded, curious why she had returned. "I thought you should know," Hayes said quietly. "The information Colonel Parker protected all these years has already led to the identification of 3 active networks operating against U.S. interests. His sacrifice wasn't in vain." "Is he okay?" Miller asked. "Parker?" Hayes smiled slightly. "He's been debriefed and relocated to a secure retirement facility. One with much better food than Parkview. He asked me to give you this." She handed Miller a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of a young Marine in dress blues, standing proudly beside 4 other men. On the back, written in a steady hand, "The Original Guardians, 1973. The truth was always coming. We just had to protect it long enough." Miller looked up, but Hayes was already walking away. "Agent Hayes?" he called after her. "Will the public ever know what he did?" She turned back briefly. "Someday, Officer Miller. Not today, but someday. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories are hidden behind the most ordinary appearances. And sometimes true heroes sit quietly among us, their greatest achievements known only to a few. Colonel James Parker was one such hero, a guardian of secrets who completed his final mission with the same quiet dignity with which he had served his country his entire life. In a world where heroes are often celebrated with fanfare and publicity, James Parker reminds us that the greatest acts of courage sometimes happen in silence, away from the spotlight. His story, of patience, of duty, of a promise kept across half a century, will never make the history books. But in a small-town police station, where 3 officers once placed handcuffs on an old man they didn't understand, his legacy lives on. A reminder that courage comes in many forms, and that true heroes don't always wear their medals where you can see them.